The strange chest, the stars stretched like silver dust outside the small ship. A human merchant named Ryland sat in the cockpit, his tired eyes watching the endless dark. He was not a rich man. His ship was old, patched with metal plates from different worlds, and his cargo bay held nothing valuable, just scrap tools and second-hand items that no one else wanted. Ryland lived by moving from planet to planet, buying cheap goods and selling them for a little profit. It was not a life of glory, but it kept him alive. He had no family waiting for him, no home to return to. The galaxy was cold, and he moved through it like dust in the wind. That night, on a mining outpost orbiting a dead moon, he found something unusual. In a corner of the trading hall, a poor miner tried to sell an old chest. The chest was heavy and made of strange black metal. It looked ancient, with patterns carved along its edges glowing faintly under the hall's yellow lights. 50 credits, the miner begged, pushing the chest forward. "Take it, I need food for my children." Ryland frowned. 50 credits was almost nothing. Even if the chest was empty, the metal itself could sell for more than that. But something about it felt strange. It was cold to the touch, yet when his hand rested on the surface, he felt a faint warmth under the skin. Almost like a heartbeat. "Where did you find this?" Ryland asked. The miner looked away. "In the tunnels. I don't want it. I don't care what's inside. Just take it." Ryland hesitated for a moment, then paid the credits. He carried the chest to his ship with some effort. It was heavier than it looked. He told himself it was just another item, another gamble in his endless search for profit. But in his heart he felt uneasy. Once back in the quiet of his ship, Ryland placed the chest in the cargo bay. He sat down, staring at it under the dim light. The lock on the chest was strange, not like human design. The shape was smooth, with no clear keyhole. He tapped it with a tool and the metal gave a hollow sound, but it did not open. Then he froze. From inside the chest he heard something. A faint noise. At first he thought it was the ship's engine, but no. The sound was too soft, too alive. It was like breathing. Slow. Fragile. Ryland's mouth went dry. He leaned closer, pressing his ear against the cold surface. Yes. There it was again. Breathing. His mind raced. Could it be an animal? A smuggled creature? Or something worse? The galaxy was full of dangers. Pirates, warlords, strange alien species. What if this chest carried a parasite or a weapon, or a cursed thing best left untouched? Yet his curiosity burned brighter than his fear. He dragged the chest into the center of the bay and grabbed his cutting tools. Sparks flew as he tried to cut through the lock. The metal resisted, stronger than steel, but after long minutes of grinding and effort, the seal gave way. The chest opened with a hiss, as if exhaling after being sealed for too long. The inside glowed faint blue. Strange fabrics wrapped around a small figure curled in the corner. At first Ryland thought it was a doll. Too perfect, too still. But then the figure moved. It was a child, not human. The child's skin was pale silver, almost glowing in the light. Thin lines of darker blue ran along his arms, pulsing softly like rivers of light under the skin. His eyes opened, wide and frightened, shining with an alien glow. He looked weak, trembling, as if he had been inside the chest for many days. Ryland staggered back, his breath caught in his throat. 1,000 questions stormed through his mind. Why was a child hidden here? Who locked him inside? Why sell such a thing for 50 credits? The child coughed, a small broken sound that cut through Ryland's fear. Without thinking, the merchant fetched a bottle of water and pressed it gently to the child's lips. The boy drank, his hands shaking. "Who? Are you?" Ryland whispered, though he knew the child would not understand human tongue. The boy tried to speak, but the words came out in a strange language, soft and melodic. His voice carried both fear and hope. Ryland felt his chest tighten. He had seen many things in his travels, ruins, war zones, even alien monsters, but never something like this. A noble child, perhaps, a secret heir, or maybe a refugee from some forgotten war. One thing was certain, someone had locked this child away, and someone would be searching for him. Ryland looked at the stars outside the ship's small window. He felt a chill. He had just taken possession of a secret too big for a man like him. But as the child's glowing eyes looked at him with silent trust, the merchant understood something deep inside. Whatever this was, whatever danger it brought, he could not walk away now. The chest was no longer just cargo. It was destiny, the child's secret. The ship's lights flickered softly in the cargo bay as the small alien child sat curled in the corner, wrapped in strange glowing fabric. Rylan the merchant stood a few steps away, unsure what to do. He had seen many strange things in his years of travel, but never a living child hidden inside a chest. The boy's silver skin reflected the light, and his large glowing eyes followed Rylan carefully, half afraid and half trusting. His lips trembled as he tried to speak again, but the words were soft, flowing, and completely alien. Rylan shook his head slowly. "I don't understand you, kid," he said, his voice low, "but I'll keep you safe, at least for now." The child tilted his head, confused. Rylan sighed and walked toward the cockpit. His mind raced. He had two choices. He could turn the child over at the next port and pretend he never opened the chest, or he could keep him and risk whatever storm was coming. His instincts screamed that this was trouble. But when he looked back at the small boy shivering under the faint blue light, he knew there was no going back. He fetched a blanket from his bunk and carefully placed it around the child's shoulders. The boy flinched at first, then slowly relaxed, clutching the soft fabric close. For a long while, the cargo bay was silent, filled only with the quiet hum of the ship's engine. Then a weak voice whispered in broken words through the child's lips, "Thirst, more." Rylan's eyes widened. The boy had spoken in basic trade tongue, the universal language most species used for business. "Not perfect, but enough. You can speak basic?" Rylan asked gently. The boy nodded weakly. "Little, learn. From voices." Rylan handed him another bottle of water. The child drank slowly this time, eyes never leaving the human's face. "What's your name?" Rylan asked. The boy looked down, struggling. Kyle, Rylan repeated softly. "I'm Rylan. I'm just a merchant. Nothing important." Kale's expression turned sharp for a moment as if he wanted to correct him, but the boy stayed quiet. He pulled the glowing fabric tighter around his body and whispered something that made Rylan's chest tighten. "Hide me." Rylan crouched beside him. "Hide you? From who?" Kale's hands trembled. He lifted the fabric slightly, revealing strange marks carved into his skin. They were not wounds, but symbols, glowing softly like living tattoos. They seemed ancient, powerful, and full of meaning Rylan could not understand. "Hunters," Kale said in a whisper. "Bad ones. They took me, put me in chest. I escaped." The words were broken, but the meaning was clear enough. Rylan felt the hairs on his neck rise. If someone had gone to the trouble of locking this boy away in a chest, then whoever wanted him back would not give up easily. "You're not just a kid, are you?" Rylan asked quietly. Kale's eyes glowed brighter. "Noble, family, high blood." His voice cracked. "But family, think I dead?" The weight of those words struck Rylan like a hammer. Noble blood. That meant Kale was not just a runaway child. He was the heir to power, maybe even to a throne. And if he was missing, entire armies could be moving through the stars to find him. Rylan rubbed his forehead, pacing the cargo bay. "Stars above," he muttered. "What have I gotten myself into?" Before he could think further, the ship's sensors beeped. A sharp, high-pitched alarm echoed from the cockpit. Rylan's heart skipped. He ran forward and checked the screen. A ship was following them, not close, but not far either. Its signal was scrambled, hidden behind layers of static. That was no ordinary trader or miner ship. Someone was hunting, Rylan cursed under his breath. He turned the ship into a new course, flying low near the debris fields left by old battles. The stars outside burned like fire as he tried to lose the shadow. Back in the cargo bay, Kale had crawled to the doorway, clutching the blanket tightly. His glowing eyes were wide with fear. "They come," he whispered. Rylan knelt down, trying to keep his voice calm. "Listen to me, Kale. If they board this ship, you don't make a sound. You stay hidden under the floor panels. Understand?" Kale nodded, though his hands shook. Rylan opened a small hatch in the floor, a space normally used for smuggling cheap goods past customs. He helped the boy climb in and covered him with loose cloth. Kale's glowing eyes peeked out once before the hatch sealed shut. Moments later, a sharp voice came through the comm system. "Unidentified vessel. Prepare for boarding." Rylan's stomach twisted. His ship shuddered as a grappling beam locked on. He heard the heavy clang of a docking clamp attaching. He sat in the cockpit, forcing himself to breathe slow. He had played this game before. Pirates, corrupt patrols, greedy scavengers. He knew how to act. Poor, harmless, worthless. The airlock hissed and the door slid open. A tall figure in black armor stepped aboard. His helmet was sharp, insect-like, and his eyes glowed red. Rylan raised his hands, pretending to be nervous. "I'm just a merchant," he said quickly. "You won't find anything here but scrap." The armored figure walked slowly through the ship, scanning every corner. His boots echoed loudly on the metal floor. Rylan's heart pounded as the figure stepped closer to the hidden hatch. For a moment the hunter paused as if he felt something, but then he turned away. "You have nothing," the figure said coldly, "but we will search again." And just like that he left, the airlock sealing behind him. Rylan exhaled shakily. He opened the hatch and pulled Kyle out. The boy's face was pale, but his eyes burned with determination. "They will never stop," Kyle whispered. Rylan looked at him, feeling the weight of the child's secret. For the first time he realized this was no simple rescue. This was a war waiting to begin. Hunters in the dark. The ship floated through the black sea of stars, its engines whispering low. Rylan sat in the cockpit staring at the scanner. The red dot, the hunter's ship, still lingered at the edge of the screen. It was following, never too close, never too far, Rylan muttered under his breath. Like a wolf stalking prey. He knew the type. Whoever they were skilled. They weren't rushing to attack. They wanted to wear him down, scare him, push him into a mistake. And if Kale was right, they wouldn't stop until they had him. In the cargo bay, Kale sat cross-legged on the floor, his silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. His wide eyes looked worried but calm. Children should have been crying, panicking. But Kale was different. "You feel them?" Rylan asked as he walked in, keeping his voice low. Kale nodded slowly. Dark minds cold, they search. That chilled Rylan more than the scanner ever could. He had heard stories about alien nobles. Some bloodlines were said to carry gifts, strange powers that humans could not explain. Seeing Kale's glowing skin and hearing his words, Rylan began to believe those old tales were true. The ship beeped again. A sharp signal cut through the air, forcing Rylan back to the cockpit. His heart dropped. They were being hailed. A distorted voice crackled through the comm. "Merchant vessel. Cut engines. Surrender for inspection." Rylan closed his eyes for a moment. He had been through inspections before. Pirates, corrupt patrols, black market enforcers. But this was different. These hunters weren't looking for cargo. They were looking for Kale. He tapped the comm switch and forced a weak, tired voice. "I'm just a trader. My ship is nearly empty. Nothing worth your time. Static." Then the cold reply. "We decide what is worth our time. Prepare to be boarded." Rylan cursed under his breath. He looked back at the cargo bay. Kale was standing in the doorway now, clutching the glowing fabric around his shoulders. "They come," Kale whispered again. "Yes," Rylan said, jaw tight. "And we're not ready for them." He opened the smuggler's hatch once more. "Get inside, Kale. Quiet. Don't move until I pull you out." Kale hesitated, his glowing eyes staring into Rylan's. "They will feel me." Even hidden, Rylan clenched his fists. He didn't like the sound of that. But they had no choice. He pushed the boy gently down into the hatch and covered him with old tarps and broken tools. "Stay small," Rylan said softly. "Stay silent." The ship jolted as a docking clamp locked in place. Metal screeched. The airlock hissed and the door slid open with a heavy thud. 2 armored figures stepped aboard this time. Black helmets, red glowing eyes. Their movements were slow, precise, like predators. Each carried a long weapon across the chest. Rylan forced a nervous smile. "You're wasting your time, friends. I carry nothing but junk." One of the hunters scanned the ship with a device, the beam sweeping across walls and floors. The other moved silently, inspecting corners. Their presence filled the ship like poison, heavy and suffocating. The beam paused near the floor panels. Rylan's pulse hammered in his ears. Kale was directly beneath that spot. The hunter tilted his head. The scanner beeped faintly. Rylan acted fast. He stepped forward, waving his arms. "Look, I'll show you my cargo, see? Old spare parts, worn fabrics, nothing valuable." He kicked open a crate, spilling cheap metal scraps onto the floor. "You think I'd be carrying treasure in this junkyard?" The red-eyed hunter turned his gaze toward Rylan, silent, unmoved. For a moment, Rylan thought it was over. His cover was broken. Cale would be found and both of them would die. But then Cale did something. Hidden under the panels, Cale closed his eyes and pressed his small hands against the floor. His skin glowed brighter and faint ripples of blue light spread across the metal. The scanner's beeping stopped. The hunter stared at his device, tapping it, confused. It no longer showed anything unusual. After a long pause, the armored figure grunted and turned away. Rylan let out a slow, careful breath. The hunters finished their search, cold eyes lingering on him before they left. One leaned close, his metallic voice hissing, "We will search again." Then they were gone. The docking clamp released and the ship drifted free. Rylan waited until the airlock sealed and the scanners showed clear space. Then he rushed to the hatch and pulled it open. Cale climbed out slowly, his face pale, his body trembling from the effort. His glowing skin dimmed as if his energy had been drained. "What did you just do?" Rylan asked, voice hushed. Cale's lips moved weakly. "Hide. Light bend. Mind of machine." Rylan stared at him in awe. He had seen smugglers trick scanners with tech, but never with willpower. The boy's power was real, dangerous, and priceless. "You saved us," Rylan said quietly. Cale shook his head. "No, only for now. They will follow." His voice cracked. "They always follow." Rylan sat back, rubbing his temples. The weight of it all pressed down on him. He wasn't just carrying cargo anymore. He was carrying a living target that entire fleets might kill for. Yet when he looked at Kyle, small, tired, but trying so hard to be brave, Rylan felt something he hadn't in years. A reason, a purpose. He knelt and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Then let them follow. As long as you're on this ship, I'll keep you safe." Cale's glowing eyes softened, and for the first time a faint smile touched his lips. But outside, in the endless dark of space, the hunters' ships lingered, silent shadows, waiting for their next move. The game had only just begun. The bond grows. The ship drifted through quiet space, far from trade lanes and busy colonies. Its patched hull rattled now and then, but inside the small cabin there was a rare silence. Rylan sat at the control panel, staring at the stars with a furrowed brow. Behind him, Cale sat on a crate wrapped in the glowing cloth he had been found with. His eyes followed every movement Rylan made. The boy was silent at first, but eventually his voice broke the stillness. "You afraid?" Kyle asked, his accent heavy. Rylan glanced back, caught off guard. He gave a tired smile. "You're a sharp kid. Yeah, I'm afraid. Only a fool wouldn't be." Kyle tilted his head. "But you stay. You hide me." The words cut into Rylan's chest. He had never been anyone's protector before. Never a father, never even a good friend. He had always lived for himself, surviving day by day. Yet here he was, risking everything for a child he barely knew. Rylan rubbed his face and stood, grabbing 2 small meal packs from a shelf. He tossed one to Cale. "Eat. It's not good, but it'll keep you alive." Cale fumbled with the pack, confused by the wrapper. Rylan chuckled and sat beside him, tearing it open. The smell of heated grain and meat substitute filled the cabin. Cale sniffed it, then took a cautious bite. His face twisted, but he swallowed bravely. "Bad food," Cale muttered. Rylan laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "Yeah, worst in the galaxy. Welcome to human meals." For a moment, the heaviness in the air lifted. After they ate, Kyle set the empty pack aside and touched the metal wall beside him. His glowing fingers traced faint lines across it. Rylan watched in silence as the metal shifted ever so slightly, like ripples on water. "You can do that?" Rylan whispered. Kyle nodded slowly. "I feel things. Metal, light minds. I can bend small pieces." Rylan leaned back, whistling under his breath. "No wonder they're after you. Powers like that could change wars." Kyle's eyes darkened. "Hunters want me." "Not for good." "For Cage." Rylan said nothing, but his jaw tightened. He had seen cages before. People turned into tools, slaves, experiments. He hated it. The boy's hands lowered and his eyes softened. "But you, different." "You don't sell me?" Rylan gave a dry laugh. "I could have. 50 credits to buy you, and I bet some warlord would pay $1 million to have you. But that's not who I am, Cale. I may be poor, but I'm not rotten." Cale stared at him, silent for a long time. Then he whispered almost shyly, "You feel like father." The word struck harder than any weapon. Rylan froze, unsure how to respond. No one had ever called him that. The galaxy had taken too much from him, friends, partners, even the chance to settle down. He had never thought of himself as father material. Yet here was this glowing child placing his fragile trust in him. Rylan cleared his throat. Don't get too used to it, kid. I'm not exactly good at family. But deep down, something shifted. That night, as the ship drifted through empty space, Cale couldn't sleep. He sat by the viewport staring at the endless stars. Rylan walked in, carrying a small blanket. Without a word, he placed it over Cale's shoulders. You'll freeze out here, Rylan said softly. Cale looked up at him. Stars, loud. I hear them, Rylan frowned. You hear the stars? Cale nodded. Voices, faint, not words, but feelings. Lonely, cold. He pressed his glowing hand against the glass. But when you near, voices quieter. Rylan sat beside him, leaning back against the wall. Guess that makes me your silence, huh? Cale smiled faintly. For a while they sat in peace. But peace never lasted in Rylan's life. The ship's console beeped sharply, breaking the moment. Rylan hurried to the cockpit, Cale right behind him. Another signal, another shadow. The hunters hadn't given up. They're tracking us again, Rylan muttered, slamming a fist against the controls. He plotted a new course through a debris field, a graveyard of broken ships from an old war. It was risky. Asteroids and metal shards could tear his ship apart, but safer than running in open space. The ship rattled violently as it entered the field. Pieces of old cruisers and shattered weapons floated like ghosts in the dark. Rylan steered carefully, sweat dripping down his forehead. Kyle stood behind him, eyes glowing brighter than before. I can help, he whispered. Rylan shook his head. No, you're a kid. You've done enough. But Cale placed his hands on the console, his skin glowing blue. The ship's scanners suddenly cleared, as if the cluttered field was mapped perfectly in Cale's mind. Left, Cale said calmly. Now, fast. Rylan obeyed without question. The ship darted between two giant slabs of wreckage, sliding through a gap too small for the hunter's vessel. Behind them, an explosion lit the darkness as one of the hunter ships clipped debris and spun out. Rylan looked back in shock, then at Cale. How did you... Cale just smiled faintly, though his body shook from exhaustion. I feel the paths. Rylan's chest tightened. The boy was saving him, just as much as he was saving the boy. As the ship cleared the debris field, Rylan glanced at Kyle. All right, kid. Maybe you're more useful than I thought. Kyle tilted his head. Useful? Rylan smirked. That's human for family. Kyle's glowing eyes softened, and for the first time since they met, his smile was real. But beyond the stars, Rylan knew the hunters were still out there. They had survived another night, another chase, but the game wasn't over. And now, with this child beside him, Rylan realized something dangerous. He had something to lose. The betrayal Rylan's ship limped into a spaceport orbiting a dusty red planet. The engines groaned as he guided it into a landing bay, but at least the hunters were no longer on the scanner. For now, he and Cale had bought some time. The air smelled of oil and smoke when the hatch opened. This port was not one of the big ones, just a ring of rusted metal where smugglers, traders, and drifters came to fix their ships and spend what little money they had. Rylan had been here before, and he knew someone here. Stay close, Cale, Rylan said, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. No wandering, no glowing, if you can help it. Cale gave a small nod, pulling the strange cloth tighter around his silver skin. His glowing eyes dimmed as he lowered his head, trying to look ordinary. But nothing about him was ordinary. They walked through the crowded market halls, past stalls selling strange meats, rusty tools, and black market tech. Finally, they stopped at a workshop with a flickering sign. Inside, sparks flew as a man in a grease-stained jacket worked on a hover engine. Loran, Rylan called. The man turned, squinting. Then his face lit up. Rylan, you old scrap rat. He threw down his tools and clapped Rylan on the back with a laugh. Didn't think I'd see you again. Rylan smirked. Still fixing broken engines for broken people, I see. Someone's got to do it, Loran said. Then he noticed Cale standing behind Rylan. And who's this? Don't tell me you finally settled down and had a kid? Rylan hesitated. Something like that. Loran raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Well, come in, both of you. You look half dead. Sit, eat. My wife's cooking hasn't killed anyone yet. For the first time in days, Rylan felt a spark of relief. Loran was an old friend. They'd smuggled goods together once, run from pirates, even saved each other's lives a few times. If there was anyone Rylan thought he could trust, it was him. That night they ate around a small table. Loran's wife served stew that smelled far better than the ship's rations. Kyle sat quietly, eating with careful manners that seemed too refined for a child raised in hardship. Rylan noticed it, and so did Loran, though he said nothing. After dinner, Rylan sat with Loran in the workshop while Cale rested. They drank cheap ale and laughed about old runs, old mistakes, the way men who had survived too much often did. But when Cale slipped into sleep, Rylan caught Loran staring at the boy with a strange look in his eyes, a look that made Rylan's gut twist. Later that night, while Kyle slept in a corner under a blanket, Rylan went to wash up. As he passed the workshop door, he froze. Loran's voice drifted out low and sharp. He was speaking into a comm unit. Yes, I'm sure, Loran whispered. The boy is here, silver skin, glowing eyes. He's the one you're looking for. Rylan's heart slammed against his ribs. Loran paused, listening to the reply. Then he said, Payment first. I don't risk my station for free. The comm crackled, and Rylan heard enough to know the truth. The hunters. They had found him again, because of Loran. For a moment, Rylan couldn't move. This was his friend, the man who had pulled him out of a burning wreck once, who had shared bread when both had nothing. And now he was selling him out for credits. Rylan's hands curled into fists. He wanted to storm in, to shout, to break something. But Cale's sleeping face flashed in his mind. The boy depended on him. He couldn't afford rage. He needed control. Quietly, Rylan slipped back into the small room where Cale lay. He knelt and shook him gently. Cale, wake up. We need to leave. The boy stirred, rubbing his glowing eyes. Now? Night? Yes. Now. Rylan's voice was urgent but soft. Be silent. Don't ask questions. Kyle nodded, sensing the danger. He wrapped the glowing fabric around himself, and together they crept out through the back door of the workshop. The cold night air bit at their skin as they moved through dark alleys. Behind them, Rylan heard voices. Loran's voice. This way! Hurry before he runs! The betrayal cut deep, but Rylan forced himself not to look back. They reached the landing bay where Rylan's ship sat waiting, patched but ready. He pushed Cale inside and started the engines. The ship roared to life, lights flickering across the bay. Figures appeared at the far end of the dock, shadows with glowing red eyes. The hunters. Already here. Hold on, kid, Rylan shouted, slamming the throttle. The ship shot forward, blasting through the closing hangar doors just before they sealed shut. The hunters' weapons fired, streaks of red energy flashing past the hull. One shot grazed the wing, sending alarms screaming in the cockpit. Rylan gritted his teeth, fighting the controls as the ship spun into the black void of space. Cale clung to his seat, eyes wide with fear. They never stop, he whispered. Rylan didn't answer. His chest burned with fury, fury at the hunters, fury at the betrayal, fury at himself for ever believing this galaxy had real friends left in it. But when he looked at Cale, trembling and small yet still alive, he felt something else. Resolve. Listen to me, Cale, Rylan said, voice steady now. As long as I breathe, they won't take you. I swear it. Cale's glowing eyes locked onto his. For the first time, there was no fear, only trust. Behind them, the hunters gave chase. Ahead, the stars stretched wide, filled with both danger and hope. The bond between man and child had been tested, and it had survived betrayal. But the real fight was only beginning. The final chase. The ship screamed through the void, its engines burning hot and fragile. Alarms wailed in the cockpit as Rylan gripped the controls, sweat dripping down his face. Behind them, the hunters' ships cut through space like knives. Their black hulls gleamed, their red lights glowing like hungry eyes. Rylan muttered curses under his breath. He had outrun pirates before, even war patrols. But these hunters were different. They moved with precision, never wasting a shot, never breaking formation. Whoever they were, they wanted Cale badly enough to risk tearing the stars apart. "Hold steady, Cale," Rylan shouted over the alarms. The boy sat strapped in the co-pilot's chair, his glowing eyes wide. The ship shook with every near hit, sparks bursting from panels. Cale clutched the armrests, but he wasn't screaming. He was too calm for a child, too focused. "They follow. Too close," Cale whispered, his voice soft but steady. Rylan barked a dry laugh. "Sharp observation, kid. Any ideas on how to lose them?" Cale's small hands tightened on the chair. "Hide path, I can try." Rylan looked at him. The boy was already drained from bending the scanner back at the port. Asking more of him now felt wrong. But one glance at the hunters closing in made the choice for him. "Do it," Rylan said. "Whatever you can." Kyle closed his eyes. His silver skin shimmered faintly as his breathing slowed. The lights on the console flickered. The ship's scanner glitched for a moment, then cleared, sharper than before. Strange blue ripples spread across the screen, outlining not just the hunters' positions but hidden paths through the asteroid field ahead. Rylan's eyes widened. "You're showing me openings? Stars, that's brilliant." Without hesitation, he angled the ship toward the field. Jagged rocks spun wildly, colliding in slow but deadly dances. Old wrecks floated between them, rusted cruisers, shattered gunships, the bones of forgotten wars. The hunters followed. The first boulder scraped against Rylan's hull, sending sparks across the viewport. He winced, but pushed harder. "Cale, guide me! Left! Now!" Cale cried. Rylan jerked the controls. The ship spun just as a chunk of metal larger than a city block slid past them. The hunters fired, but the shot slammed into the debris instead. "Right, down," Cale called again, his eyes glowing brighter. Rylan obeyed, trusting the boy's strange instincts. Together they danced through the graveyard of stone and steel. One hunter ship clipped an asteroid and exploded in a flash of red. The blast lit the darkness like a dying star, but two more ships stayed on their tail. The strain was too much. Cale's glow dimmed and he slumped forward, gasping. The console flickered back to normal, the strange paths fading. "Cale!" Rylan shouted, grabbing his arm. "I'm fine," the boy whispered. "But can't hold long." Rylan's jaw tightened. He had to finish this himself. He scanned the field ahead and saw it, a narrow canyon of rock twisting and deadly. If he could pull the hunters in there, maybe he could trap them. "Hold on, kid," Rylan muttered. He slammed the throttle. The ship dived into the canyon, the walls of stone closing around them. The hunters followed, their red lights glowing brighter in the dark. The narrow path forced them closer, their weapons firing wildly. Rylan gritted his teeth, weaving between jagged spires. The ship's hull screamed as rocks scraped along the sides. He triggered his last two decoy flares, sending bright bursts of light into the canyon. One hunter fired at the flare, blasting itself into rubble. Only one remained. The final hunter closed in faster than the rest. Rylan could feel its weapons locking on. His ship couldn't take another hit. Then Cale stirred. His small hand reached out, glowing faintly, touching the viewport glass. His voice was weak, trembling but steady. "Let me try once more." Before Rylan could stop him, Cale focused. His eyes blazed bright blue, brighter than ever before. The rocks around them shifted, not much, but enough. A boulder slid free from the canyon wall, floating into the hunter's path. The hunter fired, breaking the rock apart, but fragments still tore into its engines. Sparks burst from the enemy ship. It spun, collided with the canyon wall, and exploded in a violent blaze. The shockwave rattled Rylan's ship. Panels cracked, alarms screamed, and the engines groaned in pain. But they were still flying. They were alive. Rylan pulled them out of the canyon back into open space. Silence filled the cockpit, broken only by the faint hum of the wounded engines. Kyle slumped back in his chair, his glow dimming to a faint shimmer. His chest rose and fell slowly, exhaustion plain on his face. "You saved us again," Rylan said softly. His voice was rough, not from fear, but from something deeper. Gratitude. Cale's lips curved into the smallest smile. "We saved. Together." Rylan sat back, staring at the stars ahead. For the first time in years, he felt more than survival. He felt purpose, but the fight wasn't over. He knew the hunters weren't finished. More would come. And somewhere out there, Cale's noble family might not even know he was alive. Rylan looked at the boy beside him. Fragile, glowing, yet stronger than anyone he'd ever met. "We're not done yet, kid," he said quietly. "But I'll get you home. No matter what it takes." Cale's eyes fluttered closed as he drifted into sleep, his hand still resting against the viewport, glowing faintly against the endless dark. Outside, the stars stretched wide and silent, hiding both danger and destiny. The chase was over, for now. But the war for Cale's life was only just beginning. The return and the choice. The ship limped through the stars, wounded but still alive. Metal groaned with every turn, and half the panels flickered with warning lights. Rylan sat in the cockpit, his hand steady on the controls, though his body ached with exhaustion. Kyle slept in the co-pilot's seat, his small body wrapped in the glowing cloth. His silver skin shimmered faintly, as if even in sleep he carried the light of another world. Rylan glanced at him, and for the first time in years the merchant felt something he thought he had lost long ago. Hope. But hope was dangerous. Hope meant risk. Hope meant loss, and the hunters were not gone. Not really. For days Rylan pushed the ship along secret routes, avoiding trade lanes, skimming past dead moons and dust storms. At last the map on his screen lit up with a destination Cale had whispered in half-sleep. A hidden world. The noble homeworld. The fortress planet of his people. When the planet appeared on the horizon, Rylan's breath caught. It was unlike any world he had seen. Wrapped in a shimmering shield of energy, surrounded by fleets of elegant silver ships that glowed under the light of their star. This was not a place for drifters or scrap merchants. This was power. As soon as they crossed into the system, his comms lit up. A sharp voice crackled through. "Unidentified vessel. You are entering restricted space. State your purpose." Rylan hesitated. His mouth went dry. Then he forced his voice steady. "I'm carrying someone who belongs to you." He glanced at Cale, who stirred but did not wake. "A child." There was a long silence. Then the voice returned, urgent, almost breaking.